Okay guys, we've talked about heroes and the element of story in the previous videos. Now today we're going to talk about villains. If you want to hear more about these different things, subscribe below so you can catch the new videos we're going to put out. Let's talk about villains, shall we? The bad guy. Have you noticed, especially in the last 10 years, the bad guys become more interesting than the good guy? I don't know if you realize this, but there's a huge push in the industry where the villain is actually more appealing, more mysterious, more interesting than the hero, than the vanilla boring hero. I mean, examples are, we've got a whole movie on Maleficent. Guess what? She's a villain. Maleficent is evil. Well, we got a whole movie on her. Crueladevil, she's evil. We got a whole movie on her coming out. Emma Stone, just so you know what's happening. We've got a lot of villains in story today that are really interesting. Kylo Ren is one of the most interesting characters in the new Star Wars arc, right? He's one of the more interesting characters. Darth Vader, one of the more interesting characters. What is that? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that that shouldn't happen, that we shouldn't be intrigued, or that the villains can't be cool or interesting. But what I am gonna say on this is, the villain is supposed to, like the hero, depict an element that's very real in the hero's journey. And when the villain is not someone we want to fight or not someone we want to lose, we've got a problem. The way that it affects our ability to navigate in our journey ourselves, things get kind of muddled. The Bible talks about living single-mindedly, right? That single-mindedness is a value in the kingdom, and it's how you're supposed to live. Double-mindedness is actually wicked. That person is unstable. They shouldn't expect to receive anything from God. But when the villain is actually someone we're rooting for, someone we're more interested in, someone we want to have more screen time, someone we don't want to lose, there's actually a double-mindedness in our approach to the whole story. We're not sure who we want to win. I mean, I don't know if you notice, even in some shows you watch, sometimes you're like, I don't want the bad guy to lose. I like them better than this dumb hero. Or whatever, right? That happens. I find myself experiencing that. And it's not necessarily because of me, it's because of the storyteller. It's because of what they've done with their characters. And so I just want to point out that there is this element of making the villain the more interesting and compelling character in the story that is a problem in the way the story is being told. Why? Because of how it affects us in our story. We want to be nice and clear on who the enemy is and who the good guys are and where we're supposed to head, and there shouldn't be any question on what direction that's headed in. And there's actually a value in our society where having multiple streams of thought that you're carrying at once and you're trying to be well-rounded, well-educated, is actually frowned upon to not consider other options. That actually sets you up for failure in the spirit world, in the real one. When you're trying to make progress and move forward and actually build in your life, you can't actually have many other options available to you and do the thing that God is on. He's very interested in wholeheartedness with everything that you are. That is a very real dynamic the Bible's after, that Jesus talks about, that Paul talks about. You're supposed to be progressing in your story with all of your being, not a question in sight. And when we've got questions popping up over who the bad guy is, or how we want this to end, or what should happen in the outcome of this, for the sake of it being more entertaining versus actually adding value to our story, things get kind of muddled. And I don't love that just from an influencer place, right? I'm not saying that things should be boring and cliche and cookie cutter all the time. I think there are definitely creative ways to keep telling these stories, but we need the bad guy to be nice and clear and defined, and we need to not be on his team. We need to know he's the bad guy and he should lose. I can beat him. I'm allowed to oppose this guy with everything that I have, because that's how we're supposed to live our lives. There is a very real enemy coming against you, and he has an agenda, and his goal is to totally destroy you. Too intense? That's real life. There's a guy here, he's trying to ruin your life. And the reality is, it needs to be nice and clear that he's here, what he's like, and that you need to not participate in anything that he's doing. There's nothing appealing or attractive about him. That's absolutely true, and that needs to be our stance. And we've got villains out there who are kind of suggesting otherwise. I'm concerned at what that does to our moral compass and our ability to actually discern, actually separate the difference between good and evil. Evil starts to become a little murky, and maybe there isn't so much of a good here, and gray. That's not real. There's no such thing as gray. It's black and white. It's good, it's evil. There is a defining line, and we need to know the difference. When villains are flirting with that, I've got a problem, just as far as how it's influencing us as a people. So you guys, when it comes to watching movies and understanding who the bad guy is, I want you to start exercising and practicing what's evil here. Even if the storyteller is making the villain appealing, you can still be responsible on your end and recognize, okay, I can relate to this character, I understand it, blah, 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 but this is still the bad guy. This is still the evil piece that we can't make space for, we can't accommodate, we can't be understanding or sympathetic to, and it still needs to be opposed. That needs to be very defined in your own practice and how you observe anything in your environment when it comes to deciding what's good and what's bad. We want to instill that, we want to champion it, we want to own it, exercise it, get really good at that. And if you guys want to get nice and clear on who the bad guy is in your life, we've provided a link in the description below where you can apply to work with one of our coaches for the Hero's Arc. We'll get nice and defined who the bad guy is and that you can totally fight him, and here's how. And you guys remember, whenever you watch a movie, you are never alone.